What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Apex, the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready for Esports World Cup, and we have Pool Number B. We're going to go through all the teams in Pool B as we gear up for this Esports World Cup. We've got Enoch. He's busy going for the ranks grind right now. I think he also got hit with a raid from Hal, which is wild. And then we also got Jumbo, who's finishing up a video right now. So it's just me and Don. We're going to go through, get into Pool B, and then round it out with some predictions and give our thoughts on who we think is going to win. And I will probably be axe murdering a team with my prediction coming up here pretty soon. Actually, me and Don both don't have a great track record, but it is what it is. You know, we have to make a prediction at some point. Yeah. You got to do it. You got to do it.
Wouldn't it be fun if we didn't?
This one's going to be interesting, and kind of like what Jumba said last week. You could really make the argument here that this is the stronger pool. It really just comes down to personal interpretation, and obviously it doesn't even really matter at the end of the day, right? Because a lot of times these pools just go based off of like which team is feeling it that day or which group is feeling it that day. There's a lot of high-end talent in this one, a lot of also questionable talent in this one. Where is it going to go? There are some teams that looked like shit, for lack of a better word, for most of a split, and then all of a sudden come out and do great. And I'm looking a little bit at like crazy Raccoons, right? It's like, who are we going to get? Who's going to show up that day? So we're going to go through every single team here. Last week, we kind of went with some of the heavy hitters that we were really looking at and really excited about. And I kind of want to do the same thing here. Dawn, from your humble opinion inside this group, who do you view as like the top dog? Because a few come to mind here, but let's get the top dog out of the way first. In your opinion, who would it be?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously, I think, have to start with the obvious answer, and it's Alliance. I mean, just what they've done over the past year plus now has just proven that really on paper, it's tough to say that they're not the best roster right now. Obviously, you know, Falcons is Falcons, and like they're going to have their say. But I just think with how consistent Alliance has been, you know, really the only question is, you know, how do they perform on match point in terms of closing it out? Because I think that's something that we've seen that they've struggled with at times, is really closing out those match point finals and kind of, you know, dialing it back maybe that 10% they need to in terms of their aggressiveness when it comes to just playing for, you know, a position versus a fight or whatever the case is. Obviously, they got a little unlucky at NOLA, I think, just with, you know, the character selection and not having the ring console at the right time and all of that. But regardless, again, just with Hawkus, with unlucky, with Effect, I mean, it's just a complete team. It's a complete package, everything you'd want from a top tier IGL to two absolute nukes on the sticks. So I think you got to start with Alliance when we talk about this group.
Yeah, not only that, but they're continuing their good form from last season, and also they are the winner, or really the only Apex winner so far in Esports World Cup history. So for them, they're going to be wanting, you know, kind of defending that crown, and we can see if they're going to do that here. Honestly, the only thing that pisses me off about Alliance, I have no problem with them winning ever. I just hate how quickly it looks like they're about to do it sometimes. And so in NOLA, I was really rooting against them because it looked like they were going to win it with like 4 games, or like with only 4 games played, and we're just going to have to play the final 2 as a formality. But yeah, if Alliance can make this one go a little bit longer than normal, I have no problem hopping behind the Alliance train and seeing if they can win another one here. I do think they are the best team in the world right now. You know, obviously you can make the point of like Falcons and what they've been doing recently, but it's just so hard to look at what Alliance has accumulated over the last few months, and it's just a lot of just great performance after great performance after great performance, and some of them have just been unlucky at the end of it, right? Like you look at Germany, just unlucky, like the Pathfinder zip line that I thought they were going to win it. I thought it was over. I thought they had won it, and then you know, obviously they get it into a great start there in NOLA, doing everything they can for that, and just come up short at the end of the day. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think Alliance is going to be that heavy hitter. The only other one that I
say too, real quick, have you seen the jerseys? Have you seen
I was going to bring up jerseys here in a second too.
I was just say, yeah, they rebranded to a new jersey. Gotta say, they might have the jersey buff. I don't know if that's the last thing they needed. in my personal opinion, it's definitely an upgrade. I'm honestly planning on trying to buy one tomorrow, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I mean, I think they look pretty good. So I mean, we can definitely get into that maybe a little bit later. But I just want to make sure you're looking that up here because it is
Oh yeah.
it's definitely a solid one. I think it's definitely a
Okay.
good upgrade.
But yeah, so Alliance, they're going to be some heavy hitters. They obviously, and I think they deserve it. They deserve to be like the big name at the top of the list here. But there are some other teams that could challenge that, and on a good day could beat them. I mean, this is Apex Legends; anything can happen, and I would not be surprised if we saw another Alliance second place finish. And that's no disrespect. That's them continuing to be as great as they've been. Let's move through the rest of the teams here, Donnie. We've got a lot to get to, 19 other ones to be exact. And we'll kick it off with 100 Thieves coming from the Americas region. We got Phony, Verholst, and Jen Burton. And all of these players, they have all won a championship together. Or not together, they've all won a championship at their own respective times. But what's been weird about 100 Thieves is they obviously qualified. They did good enough. It just didn't feel like we got that performance that you said, wow, this is what I expected when these three superstars teamed up together. And I don't know what it is exactly, but I can pinpoint one stat that I just did not believe. Phony leading the team with 68 kills with Evan and Jen both sitting at 51. Pretty significant difference in kills right there. What have you been seeing from 100 Thieves, and what do you think's been kind of making it seem like they're just kind of, I don't even know how to, they're just kind of moving along a little slowly here.
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously we saw how well they did at NOLA. They finished fourth place overall. You're thinking, okay, like if this is kind of like their first initial step, right? Like it surely would have to improve over time. And I'm not going to say they got any worse, but like you said, like we kind of were just waiting for like, okay, there's this team. Like this is the version we expect. This is who we can count on to show up at lands. But yeah, we really just haven't gotten that. And like you mentioned, like Phony ends up leading in kills, which to his credit and kind of to the meta right now, a lot of IGLs have kind of been playing the characters like an Ash or like an Alter that kind of let you get in and out of fights a little bit easier. So it's not maybe out of the realm for Phony to maybe lead. I think it's just that little bit of a gap, like you mentioned. Like I didn't really expect both Evan and Jen Burton to not be a little bit closer in kills, just because from what we can expect of the firepower, just from what all three bring to a team. I think it really just has been like they haven't really as found that consistent cohesion in team fights. I think you've got when you have three very smart players that know a lot about the game, sometimes you get almost too many comms and you're not allowing Phony to bring what he brings best, which is his mind. And I think that at times you'll get almost too many ideas thrown out from Evan and Jen. I think Evan probably more than Jen, just because Evan, I think, is just more naturally a talker after being on the TSM roster that he was recently on. So sometimes I think trying to dial that back a little bit to allow the IGL to express their ideas a little bit more can be tough when you came from a role like that to this now. So I think ultimately, like what they're going to need to figure out is like that balance. It's going to be, allowing Phony to do what he does and put them in spots to win, but also then promote Evan and Jen to do what they do and absolutely nuke teams and fights. I think if they're able to figure out their comms and their chemistry when it comes to just how that communication is going to flow amongst themselves, I think we'll definitely see the version we expect to see. But you also never know that when we get to these LAN tournaments, right? Like, you get that extra little bit of adrenaline, you get that extra, motivation to want to win everything. It could also make it worse. So I think what's going to be so interesting is what do we get from this team when it comes from that.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think they're one of the more interesting teams, and you would put them in the category of who are we going to get, I think. And it seems like their floor is much higher than a lot of teams because it's not like they had an absolutely diabolical day. But they just never had that day where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what we expected. This is what we thought was going to take place when this team formed in the first place. So it just hasn't been to that level, but their floor has not been that bad either. So, I mean, the skill is there. The championship pedigree is there. They've all won before. They can show up on LAN, but there's also been times where each of them have had like a LAN performance that, they wouldn't be very proud of. So we'll see what happens with 100 Thieves. going to be a very interesting squad moving forward. We're going to move into Crazy Raccoons now. We got Sangjun, Obli, and Karong Pu. They were a team that won back in LA. They won under Reject Winity. They come back together. They actually had a little bit of time apart. They come back together under the Crazy Raccoons mantra, and then things did not get off to a great start, Dawn. Every single time we talked about them in our regional roundup, we kind of go through, and it was almost kind of like a chore. It's like we got to talk about them a little bit because they have won a LAN before, so it's like they have earned that right, but they never really played to that level until the regional final. They sneak in at the very last second. They get in there. Don, what do we expect from Crazy Raccoons, and what apron would you put them in on this? Because I don't know if you can put them in like they're definitely not close to the Alliance tier right now, but I also don't know if they're even in that 100 Thieves tier of like, who are we going to get? Because it's like, who are they? We don't really know who they are in the first place.
They might be in their own category of like, I have no freaking clue except for the other word. I mean, it's just like it's just so strange to see a team, obviously, that they come out, they obviously do what they do in LA. It's awesome to see because, again, it really started this spark of the non-dynasties, winning tournaments. And it really set Apex, I think, into a really fun time in year 4. But then, like we mentioned, they go to then missing Germany. They split up during that split. They decide to come back together because they're just the best options. I believe, from my understanding, at least in South Korea, just the talent pool isn't as deep. So a lot of the players ended up kind of like, intermingling amongst themselves, and then sometimes will come back together to play. But yeah, just to kind of see, again, where they were. Again, we mentioned, they were outside the top 20, outside the top 25. It was just like, there's just no shot. And then they just pull out what we usually expect of them, get a second place in regional finals, had a shot to win it if it wasn't for a crazy 1v1v1. The SBI Esports ends up winning there at the end. And we really did see just the version that I think we've expected all split, which, they picked a hell of a time to do it when the points were maximized in the regional finals. So that was definitely great timing on their part. But I think the biggest thing that they can try to hang their hat on is that they are peaking at the right time, hopefully, for them. And obviously, as we know, like with any other sports, momentum is such a huge thing that when you're playing well and you're kind of in that flow state, you basically can do anything you set your mind to, especially at this level. So I'll be really interested to see. My biggest things, I'm just really looking for is, kind of what is their play style that they're going to rock up with. They're going to be playing out of Pylon and Stacks on Storm Point and World's Edge, which are definitely two solid POIs given where they were picking at in the draft. So it'll be very interesting to see how they decide to play out of those POIs. Usually Stacks is a lot more of a potential edge POI, depending on who might be a Dome or Big Mod. And then Pylon can lead to be kind of a little bit more of a flex style, depending on how you decide to play it. So it'll be very interesting to see, again, just kind of what team shows up in Riyadh. And again, I think this kind of sit in that I don't fucking know category. So we'll see what happens.
I think for the sake of just ALGS and like their whatever you want to call what they've carved out in their history, I would like to see a really good performance here. I like, at least making a name for themselves here at this tournament, just because I want to see them get back to that form from LA. That was dominant. You had been calling them to be dangerous before that final day had even begun. You were like, watch this team. What was different about their play style then versus now? Like, what do you think it's a confidence thing, or do you think it was a just completely different play style thing?
I think it's definitely a mix of things. Is like, obviously, when you're playing so well and you're confident, like that obviously is going to speak volumes, right? Like you're going to make better decisions. You're going to act on the decisions a lot quicker. So like that definitely can be a part of it. But I think the biggest thing that I think we really look at is like when they were at their peak, they were doing a really good job of getting to middle zone and doing a really good job of fighting 3v3s as a team and not getting isolated. I think at times they get disjointed in fights and one of them will get out a little bit further in front than the other. St. June is their one that usually gets into fights a lot of the time first. And if he's being too over aggressive and he gets peaked by another team and he ends up going down, that kind of spirals everything else, right? And you're kind of just always on the back foot. And I feel like if they really can get to where they're synchronized in their 3v3s, because that was a big thing, if you remember in the Jayhawk video that Obley talked about, was just how good of a 3v3 team they were, because I believe are all it's triple M and K. So they know they can't take these 1v1s against these rollers on the better teams around the world. So they have to fight together. They always have to be peeking the same things or holding angles well together as a group. And in Apex, it only takes a split second for a roller just to beam you with an R9 or P20s or whatever the weapon meta choice is at the time. So it really is just them being tight knit together, making sure they're fighting as a group. And if they do that, I think there's way too much talent there for them not to make some sort of run. I don't know if it's LAN winning, obviously, because it's going to take a lot really to dethrone, I think, Alliance or Falcons right now. But there's no reason they couldn't make a match point given the experience that they have if they play the way that we've seen them play in the past.
Yeah, so Crazy Raccoon kind of in a weird little category of their own, and we'll see what happens with the Raccoons over there. Let's move on into another America's region team, and this is Team Fusion. This is our boy Burke's team with Kimchi, January, and Dan Maddock. Now, when the season started in the Americas, I don't think anybody would have had Fusion in there at all. I just don't think people would have had it there. And I don't think that's, disrespectful to say. I think when you looked at the Americas region, there's a lot of talent up top. You did not really picture a team like Fusion making it in, but they proved what they can do. And I think that bringing in Kimchi has been a big addition for the squad after obviously the Open. Kimchi coming in here kind of stabilized things a little bit. Now, from what I've seen from Fusion, they get into zone, and when they get into their spot that they're looking to hold down, for the most part, they can do it. The only thing that I've seen them not be able to do is finish off some of these games that maybe they should be able to finish off, get those first places, and get themselves some extra points. So from Fusion side of things, Don, where do you see Team Fusion being?
Yeah, like I think you mentioned, Kimchi was definitely a very solid pickup. I think that he provides a lot more flexibility in character selection than I think what Trestax at the time was able to bring. And I just think that especially when we're going to get into these 10-game sets, like that's going to make a huge difference when you got a guy that played a complexity, that coached complexity there for a bit, that just has a little bit more versatility. It's always going to go a long way. And I just think that with this team, so much of, I think, the burden on this team was just on January to do any sort of fragging potential when they had Trev. Whereas I think now Kimchi at least provides a little bit more. Again, I can't say it's, a huge difference because obviously like Kimchi's usually played like an anchor or backline role, but Kimchi definitely has a lot more confidence, I think, to step up in these pockets and fights and like really take these 3v3s, whereas Trev, I think, just struggled at times. So I think that's going to be a big thing for Fusion is I know they want to shift away from just being a very, very hard zone team and provide a little bit more flexibility when it comes to their fighting play style in general. So I'll be interested to see if they're able to pull that off. January is going to be a huge, factor for this team one way or the other. If he's doing a good job getting picks on other teams or opening up fights, they have a really big chance to, I think, make somewhat of a run. Again, I don't know how big their ceiling is going to be, but we'll definitely see. I know they've found a lot of success on Broken Moon, and they did end up getting a really good map choice on Broken Moon with Core. So that's definitely going to be a big thing for them if they can maximize the points there. But I think for a young roster, adding in Kim that has a little bit more experience, I definitely think there's a few things that they can hopefully figure out. Like you mentioned, if they can kind of get some more kills and finish off these games when they find themselves in top 5s and 6s.
Yeah, there was just some disappointing games where I'm like, oh, they got this. The one that comes to mind is notably the Falcons game on Broken Moon, where I think it was a 2v3 and they lost. It's just like, those are the types of games where it separates you from being like a true contender to like a team that's like, okay, maybe they're a little bit lower on that totem pole because a lot of other teams probably finished that one off, right? So it's like, we just got to see a little bit more of that. And we get enough about Fusion coming in from our boy Burke, just breaking it down every single week. But super excited to see Burke over there, and hopefully that they can make a splash over there in Riyadh. Let's move on into the next team from EMEA. This is Gaming Gladiators. And it's weird because this was a team that for a long time was kind of in that same area, that same arena as like a team alliance. And then from that situation, they kind of fell off a little bit. They move on from Lufka. They bring in Funk from the US. Funk comes in there. And then now they kind of like squeak in at the bottom of EMEA. I'll cut them some slack there. There's a lot less spots available, so a lot less room for error. But for Gaming Gladiators, Dawn, this was a team we talked about a bunch once again in our regional roundup because it's just a name you expect to see do well. And there were some times where they did, but there was also a lot of times where they kind of faltered a little bit. So, what was holding Gaming Gladiators back, in your opinion? And where do you what area do you see them fitting in, moving into Riyadh? Do you see them as like a contender, kind of a toss up? Like, where are they sitting currently?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that with the ever-changing landscape when it comes to the character selection and just meta picks and things like that, it definitely felt like there for a bit. Like they definitely were on top of the meta. They felt very good about it. I think once we got into a little bit more of an aggressive meta with we've seen like Ballistic come to light with the Ashes, and just things being a little bit more aggressive at times. I think we've just seen that they've just been a little bit slower to that adjustment, and they just haven't had that same firepower as some of these other teams have. And I think that they make the switch from Lufka, they add in Funk, who when Funk is playing very well, we've seen that. I mean, he was literally the reason that Falcons say that they didn't win EWC. I mean, anytime you bring up Funk to privacy, he says fuck that guy. So like it's it's definitely a thing that Funk can definitely be an X factor one way or the other. He can be the reason why you win. He can be the reason why you struggle at times just because of how aggressive he can be. And, it's a good thing to have an aggressive fragger, but obviously like you need to have that restraint at times to know when not to go for something. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of how their chemistry continues to develop. It seemed like they started to figure out some things towards the end. I know they had at least a decent performance during the regional final. But they definitely were flip-flopping. I mean, just watching that EMEA regional, there was 4 different teams in game 7 that were qualifying, and then 4 new teams would jump in game 8. So it was definitely all over the place, and I know they were definitely sweating it out there towards the end. But yeah, I think for this team, like I think right now, they definitely still have the ability to make finals. I don't really know where their ceiling then goes from there. I think if they even get a top 10, I feel like they'll feel really good about that. And they definitely have the ability to. I want to make sure that's like understood. I just think that right now with the landscape of some of these other teams are coming in a little bit more, some of these teams have things a little bit more figured out. Some of these teams feel a little bit more comfortable in the ban meta and just having these different characters that they're always switching to. It'll be very interesting to see kind of how Funk can maybe affect things at this LAN to see if they maybe can pick up a few more kills here or there that they haven't been getting. And ultimately see if that can maybe bring back a spark to what's been missing for them.
Yeah, and I think he can. I mean, if you look at the 5 match days that he was there with the squad, he did rack up 44 kills, and Blast is leading the team with 56, and he was there for all of them, right? So he has brought in that firepower. He can do that. Something else you put down here inside the guide that you made was the fact that their storm point is not very good. They need to start really working on their storm point. That's going to be a key factor for them moving forward as well. So we can see what GG is going to do in Riyadh, but that is the GG breakdown. Moving over into another EMEA team, and this is a team I absolutely axe murdered. This was Go Next Esports with, as I like to call them,
fair, that makes you feel better.
Yeah. We got Kinda. I like to call them Kind 4. We got Henchman, and then we got Attenum. And they started off the season great, and then I started talking about them, and it went south. It went south real quick. Things did not go well. At the Open, I said, watch out for them to win the whole thing. They got 137th. I mean, it's just things you can't make up. Like, it's just, it was so bad what I did. But this team is a very high-powered offense. They can score. They can score points. And by score points, I mean they can kill people. Henchman leading the team with 72 kills. I mean, we just talked about Gaming Gladiators. Their highest player has 56, 71 from them with 72 with Henchman. So they have the power to shoot. They have the power to kill. But when you get into these bigger lobbies, Don, when you get into these higher tier skilled lobbies, Don, that doesn't always go over the way you want it to.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'm going to be very interested to see how they decide to play things because I think what we've seen is that, really what we've had so far this year is that we've had obviously America is still the region that we think it is, still the number one region. I think that APAC South has made an argument to be the second best region right now. And I really feel like EMEA outside of Alliance has been a region that's been trying to figure out, how the rest of these teams are going to fall in place. We've obviously seen Navi has started to play very well, and it's outside of everything that happened with the roster, they are definitely a team that needs to be talked about. But really outside of that, we really haven't had like that consistent third, fourth, fifth team that we really expected to, and I really feel like Go Next was maybe one of those teams that we were expecting, and then they kind of obviously had the open, or like, okay, are they going to split up? Like, are they going to stick together? They end up sticking together. They have a pretty decent rest of the split. They do find a way to win regional finals, which is definitely a big shout out for them. But one thing I've definitely noticed is that while they started off the split being super aggressive, I definitely think they've dialed it back quite a bit. And that definitely showed in their regional final performance. They only had 28 kills that entire set, which was, I think, what was it, 13 games, if I remember correctly. So that's definitely not numbers I think we maybe expected from them to start the year. But when they're able to accumulate as many placement points as they did, they're able to find the best position to win on match point. That is all that really matters at the end of the day. And I mean, we saw the other version of Go Next, a lot of people said weren't necessarily the most potential fragging team and the quote unquote best team, but they got to match point and they're able to use their positioning and ended up winning the game. So I'll be very interested to see how they decide to play things. They've drafted a ton of zone POIs, going with Q's quarantine zone on Broken Moon. They've got draft point on E District, and they've got countdown on World's Edge, along with Cascade Falls on Storm Point. So a lot of zone POIs. I think they're going to try to move quickly to zone and put themselves in position to get those top 5, 6s and feel good about themselves. And then the biggest thing those need to do is execute in those final circles and get the kills they need to win. So
yeah, something to note too. Also, Kinda and Henchmen have never been in a finals lobby. I don't think that's correct, right, Dawn? They've never been in
correct.
one.
Yeah.
And there's you can cut them some slack on some of it, but at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of really high tier talent. So when you get that, and then you have the ups and downs that they had just in their own pro league, and then the 137th at the Open, that's where we kind of find ourselves with Go Next. So if I could use NFL terms, I would say on the bubble or maybe in the hunt. Like the in the hunt graphic where it's like they're clearly not going to make playoffs, but there's just that chance. Maybe that's where Go Next is at right now. And now that I say that, they're going to win the whole thing. So
probably
congrats, Go Next Esports.
I mean, I've gone from picking them to not do that. Well, Go Next, just the name in general. I've gone from them. I don't think they're going to do that well. They go win Japan. Then I say that they're going to make finals at freaking the Open, and then they get out the first day. Mm-hmm. So like, surely whatever we say, the opposite's going to happen. So I mean, we'll definitely see with them, but they'll definitely go as far as Adnam takes them. I think him as an IGL. When he's locked in and doing well, we saw what he did with Noctum Esports, right? Mm-hmm. So I definitely do think that if he's on top of this game, I think Kinda and Henchmen are definitely good enough as a duo to make a run with Adnam leading the charge. So
we'll see what happens with Go Next Esports. Moving down into APAC South, our first APAC South team in this group. We got JD Gaming, got YC, XD, and JR. Those are the names of the players. So simple, man. Every player had 2 letters in their name. We love that. It makes it so easy for me. Now, Dawn, JD Gaming, this was the old X and Y roster. What do you see from JD, and we'll bring up the old NFL graphic once again. If you had to pick the Super Bowl contender, just contender, make a run in the hunt on the bubble, where do you see them at right now?
I think they're just in their own tier, bro. It's just wild card. Like it's just like they are a team that is not going to play traditional macro, is not going to play, a typical LAN Apex. I think that we'll see from a lot of other teams. They're just going to be highly aggressive. They're going to fight as much as they can. They're going to at times ent people, which is not going to make some people happy at LAN. Uh, they've unfortunately not had that playstyle translate very well at lands in the past. So we'll definitely have to see if they are able to improve on the 33rd they got in Split 2 last year. But I think it's a team that on the right day will do well in the GURBS format that we're going to see at EWC. And the biggest thing for them is that if they obviously just have a couple pop off games, you're looking at yourself just finishing in the top 70, you go straight to finals.
Mhm.
So I think if there is any time for a roster like this to make a finals run, it would be in a format like this where you just need to show up on one day and just have, 2, 3, 4 pop off games like they can. I mean, I've seen them get 25, 26 kill games before and win that game. So we'll definitely see. It's gonna be a fun roster. Well, for us, I don't think for the teams they're playing against, just because again they just don't play traditionally. But I mean, again, the firepower is definitely there. They got 2 of their players in the top 8 in their region in kills. Their biggest thing is that they performed well on Storm Point, but they were not there for the first round of the draft, for the POI draft. So they didn't actually get the best pick that they probably would have wanted at the time. But the ultimate question is going to be is that can their fighting play style work at a LAN? So
Mhm.
far, we haven't seen it. But again, when you come to EWC and things are a little bit different, you just never know what might happen on that day. So
Yeah, and I will say, as far as APAC South Pro League went, they were kind of in that upper tier. They separated themselves from the rest of the pack. You had VK, Genji, and then JD Gaming, all kind of at the top with a ton of points, and then it kind of dropped off considerably from after JD. But you got to give them their props there. The worst placement they had throughout the entire Pro League was 10th overall. Now, obviously, APAC South not going to be the same caliber as like a midseason playoff lobby, but once again, like you said, like this format makes it a little bit easier for you. I think if they just play their game, they can easily slide in there, get themselves to a finals, and then once you're in finals, really anything can happen, and that's really all you're trying to do if you're an APAC South team just trying to make a name for yourself. So we'll
yeah,
see what
and
happens, man.
yeah, and just in this format, when all you're looking for is to accumulate points, like it doesn't matter if you go out those first game or two and get 0 points because you lost the first fight. All it takes is just that one pop off where you get 15, 20 kills maybe, and you put yourself right back into the position to qualify for the next round. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Again, they're kind of one of these teams that can benefit from this format, and it's going to get again. It's going to be. I'll be very surprised if they're not at least if we were to use the term, I think they could be one of those bubble teams
Yeah.
that has a potential to squeak through, but also be one of the first teams dropping down to the losers bracket.
Yeah, so that is JDG, that is JD Gaming. And then we move back into an America's team, America's region team, I should say. It is NRG. We've got Guild, we've got Timmy, and we've got Sykes. NRG was 4th overall inside the Pro League for the Americas region, and they've got a lot of firepower. They got a lot of big names as well. They've also had kind of like an I don't want to say up and down season because for the most part, they have been pretty consistent, not really dropping too far. They've even won a day in their pro league. They did have like the rough start. The first match day, they didn't really do as well as they would have liked, and then after that, they kind of just fired off and they just did everything that they could. And it is the Americas region, so things are a lot tougher there. I feel like Timmy really settled in on his IGL role a lot better than people expected him to. And when you have 2 players like this, it's going to make things much better. Also, I feel like it is kind of like a talking point. Like they did kind of make a switch after the open, right? So they move away from Yanya, they bring in Sykes, and Sykes I think is the perfect player to help out Timmy, a newer IGL. I don't even want to say newer because he's been in IGL for a while, but like less experienced IGL to kind of help him out. Having that anchor player on the back end right there really kind of solidify things. Where do you see NRG inside that NFL playoff graphic?
Yeah, I definitely think if we see the version of NRG that it's at its best, I definitely think they'll be one of those teams that's in the hunt, kind of in like that second tier behind the favorites. I think that there's a lot of things to love about this roster. I'm always a huge fan of Guild. I think he's a player that a lot of people can forget at times just because we always, we talk about how, we've talked about Evan in the past. We talk about Walty. I mean, all these other controller players, but I think Gil just always shows up. He always does his job. You can always count on for a certain number of kills or performance or whatever it is from him. So I definitely think that, with him leading the team in kills, he was top 5 in the region. I think that's just all good signs that will show that I think they're going to be ready to go. Again, it's ultimately going to come down to how does Timmy perform in the IGL role. I think we all know how this team can fight. I think that when they're fighting together, they're definitely one of the best fighting teams in the world. I think that Sykes brings a lot of stability when it comes to kind of like that third backline or anchor player. Because I think right now, especially, we'll have, unless Timmy's on the crypto, we'll see a lot of Guild and Timmy kind of in that front line. But it'll be very interesting to see. I think Timmy's definitely improved with his IGLing. And I think that their coach, Winnie, has also been a big addition for them. I think that she has brought a lot of really good ideas and has just been a lot more open, I think, about some of the things that they needed to improve. And I think that anywhere that she's gone, the roster's only gotten better. And I think that's definitely shown with NRG. They maybe didn't finish exactly where they expected, because I know they were first for a decent amount of the time in Pro League. But I mean, to finish top 5 when you've only been a roster for a few weeks, a couple months, whatever the case is, it's definitely a lot of good things, I think, for NRG. And the biggest thing too, they've performed extremely well in E District. Obviously, that is a map that usually pertains to a lot more like zone, like you rush the zone, like you got to find that right building to be in the game winning position. But I think NRG has done a really good job of getting a lot of kills on that map, which can be very difficult to do, especially the early game. So it'll be very interesting to see what we get from NRG. But I do think, if I had to call it, I think that they're going to be kind of in that second tier of teams that I think will hit match point and on the right circumstance can definitely win.
Yeah, I think I put them in the contender category where they're going to make finals. It just depends on what we get in the finals. I don't think it's crazy to say that we've seen Timmy dominate like group stages, and then when it gets to that final stretch there, hasn't been able to put together that, that championship caliber run, at least without design, right? Like there just hasn't been that. Like, I think with design was the times that they got the closest to to winning. Timmy's always been able to do well in the group stages, and I think it just comes down to how they play in that finals lobby to try their best. Because I think he always goes for the little bit more aggressive play, which, if that's what you're good at, I say you go for it, and maybe you can find yourself in a spot there. But these finals lobbies, man, they get real tight. And I think he's gotten enough experience from it. I think he's learned from it, and I think that now would be a really good time to show off and showcase the skill that he's gained and the time that he's put in that IGL role, especially with a guy like Sykes back there. And Guild, like we had mentioned earlier, like some of these teams, they don't have a ton of kills. Guild has 76. So, and that's only 5th in that region, but still an insane amount of kills for NRG. So really excited to see what comes from NRG. I think a lot of people will be rooting for the NRG squad. I think Timmy always brings about like a rooting interest. You just want to see him do well.
Definitely.
So I'm very excited to see what NRG does. Let's move on into Rival Esports, another APAC South team. And Don, I'm not going to lie, there's not a whole lot of knowledge I got for Rival Esports, but what do you got?
Yeah, Rival Esports has been definitely a surprise team, I think, this year. Not really a team I think a lot of people would have picked to finish top 5 in their pro league. A lot of their experience does come from the Open. One of their players, that's the only land that they have peered at, was the Open, and they made a run to the finals. They got 19th, which, given that they're not necessarily the highest profile team, is definitely a big accomplishment for them. It's an all Thailand team. And they, like I said, I think their biggest thing is just looking to, piggyback off of what they've done at the Open, what they've done in Pro League. Comparative to a lot of the other teams, like you'd mentioned, the JD Gaming, the Gen G, the VK Gaming, they're not necessarily the biggest like fragging potential team. Fafa Fifth, I think is how you say his name.
I was,
Uh,
I
so
did you
I
notice I didn't even try to say
oh
those names?
yeah,
I was
100%,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not doing that.
But I'll just say F. I'll just go with that.
Yeah.
Led the team with 63 kills during Pro League, which is definitely not a number to discount. I definitely think again, like they definitely played well and obviously did enough to qualify for EWC, which is really good. Again, I think in a region that's only improving, I think that's definitely a very good showing for them. Big thing for them that they're going to be looking for is that they were a top 10 performing team of our EWC teams on Broken Moon. So that'll definitely be a map that they're going to look to continue to perform well on. They're playing out of Cultivation, which is a pretty decent rotating map, and they also ended up getting City Hall, Harvester, and Jurassic. So I think that just screams that they're going to be playing zone, which I think is definitely very smart for them, just comparative to a lot of the other teams' fighting ability from around the world. So I think if they just play their game, they don't try to do anything too crazy. I definitely think they could be in for another really good surprise run, just given some of their track records. But it could also be a team that since they're playing zone, if they do get some bad pulls or if they don't get to they don't get to zone quick enough, they get rotated on, could definitely find themselves kind of struggling towards that bottom portion of their leaderboard. So definitely won't discount them, and we'll definitely see what they do. But yeah, definitely could be another surprise run. We never know.
We got if this tournament was just based off of the names alone, we got Gop Gaps and Fafif. And that alone is a mouthful.
Yeah,
That'll give anybody a run for their money. So we
100%.
we move off from rival esports and we move back into another America's roster. We got Rock Esports that we just talked to Saucer not too long ago. There's also Deeds and Baxlon on the squad, and this is a team that personally I would love to see win this thing just for the storyline alone. Obviously, like we've talked to Saucer, we've had him on a few times. I think we talked to Vax a long, long, long time ago on the pod, obviously before you were involved with anything. So a long time since we talked to them, never talked to Deeds, but just from a pure storyline perspective, if I'm just a reporter, if I'm just a journalist and there's a team you got to pick from this, I think Rock Esports is the one that I think I get most excited about for how much bullshit went on with this roster from the beginning of Pro League to now. Just insane amounts of roster turnover, weird days, awful days. They had a 1 point day and they still, I think, got fifth in the entire Americas region. No, they got sixth by 1 point. So, like, craziness with this roster all the way around. But I feel like they found themselves here. And Saucer moving from IGLing a team he'd been with for quite a while to a completely new situation, new players, and finding like a new kind of co-IGL relationship where for a long time he's kind of just been that IGL, just kind of dominating the comms, saying where to go, doing what he likes to do. And then you have Vax who comes in here and he talks about it in the interview a little bit, how he had to balance out how exactly to play around that fit, because it wasn't easy to start, but they managed and they bounced back from a tough first day as a squad together, and then they won the next one, and then all of a sudden they win the regional final. So I'm really excited to see what Rock Esports can do. I'm rock hard. What do you got, Don?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about obviously everything that happened with the reps. You throw in Snipe down in there for a bit. There were the rumors with Nocturnal. He then leaves to go join the roster that Sauce comes from. I mean, there's just so many stories that comes from this roster. You then obviously have Deeds and Vaxlon situations. Vaxlon ended up getting dumped from Furia. Obviously, Deeds, his situation kind of just bounced all over the place since he was with Tripod. So it was definitely just a misfits roster that you just didn't really expect too much from, because you just felt like there's just too much BS going on for them to succeed. They have that first tough match day together, and then all of a sudden you see, oh shit, they just won the next one. Like, what the hell? So it's a team that definitely has seemed to figure things out quickly. Definitely a big shout out to Psycho, coaching wise, because I know there's a lot of mentions of him during the interview. And I just think that when you get three players that have been through the shit so much, it's almost like, fuck it, let's just see what happens, right? And it almost just gives you a little bit more ability to relax and just kind of play your game, and whatever happens, happens. Because no one's expecting you to do well with all the shit that's been going on. And yeah, again, not only do they win that one match day, they end up coming up and winning the regional finals. You can say what you want about that zone poll. They still had to win the game. They still had to take care of business, and they did. And yeah, it just, I think we've just seen an interesting shift with Sauce going from a pretty hard zone IGL to more of a flex with, like you mentioned, kind of working with Vaxlon on that and kind of Koa IGLing at times. And I think we've seen a good mix with Deeds, who leads the team with 66 kills. I think everyone's been pretty impressed with how he's only gotten better as time has gone on. And I just think that you kind of just throw all these good things together. And yeah, it may not have like the highest ceiling roster, but I do think they have a lot of flexibility in character choices. I do think that, Sauce, again, when he's confident and calling the way he can call, and Vaxlon's confident and doing the same thing, we've seen that they can win match point. And sometimes it is just a confidence thing of knowing that you can win in that format, whereas a lot of teams don't necessarily feel that way because they've never won a match point format kind of situation. So it'll be very interesting to see how they play. Again, they're another team that's also performed very well in E District, and they do end up getting a pretty solid POI out of Blossom Drive. So I'll be very interested to see if their regional finals performance kind of snowballs to EWC. From what I've seen during scrims so far, they've definitely been performing pretty solid. So I'll be hopeful that they're able to repeat this because, like you mentioned, it would just be an amazing story. If you're not necessarily winning, if they go out, they get top 5, top 10, I think from where they started the split to where they're at now, like it's almost already a success at this point, just even qualifying for this land. So I'm very excited to see what these guys do. Yeah, just, hopefully the sky's the limits for them.
Give it to me for the storyline. I just need that storyline. What a
Yeah.
what a crazy Jayhawk and Jumbo video that would be.
Oh,
I mean, because
100%.
both of them you'd have to. You have no choice. An incredible video from both of them that I would 100% watch. We move
Finally.
on into the next. What do you mean? I watch all their videos. We move on into the next team here. This team was Team Ronin, but it is now Evos Esports. That is Nate Hoodie and MG Clutch. MG Clutch famously has been on the pod before. I don't know if we've ever mentioned that. Just kidding. We 1000% have mentioned that. At the time when he hopped on the show, he was just a ranked grinder. Now he's playing inside the pro scene. And not only is he doing that, but he led his team with 84 kills after a ton of roster changes. This might be the villain team here, Don, because there was the infamous Nasky dropping. And it looked like their Nasky was going to make it in above him. And then in that regional final, they managed to clutch up. They get in there, and now they're going to the LAN. MG Clutch, obviously they went to the open, but now this is going to be kind of like, I mean, I don't want to discredit the open and say it wasn't like a LAN, because it was, but like this next one is kind of like their first LAN, right? Like this is one where this is congested. This is going to be a much more difficult task, and they didn't even necessarily do that well at the open. They got 49th overall. So what do you expect to see from MG Clutch and the boys?
Yeah, I think that just with obviously everything that happened with Nasky and kind of how things were shaping up during the regional final, you definitely have to give them a lot of credit. I think where a lot of teams could have tried to maybe switch their play style and play differently, they stuck to their guns and went for kills. And that ultimately ended up being the decider between them and 10K. It was just that they just continued to frag out and continue to pile up the points, that when match point ended, they were to keep themselves, in those top places, even if they weren't the ones that closed it out on match point. They almost give me a little bit of vibes of like the His Watson Furia team.
Yeah.
Like it's obviously, I think there's definitely a skill gap between the two, because I don't expect this roster to really compete for, a top 10 or anything like that, at least as of right now. But they just, they play a lot of different off meta comps, even with the character bans. I mean, we see them pulling out lifelines and revenants and things like that, and just stuff you don't expect to see, even during the character ban meta we've had. But I mean, they're gonna be hyper aggressive. You know what you're gonna get from them. They're gonna take any fight they can take. They're gonna want to play edge from any POI that they're at, and I think they're gonna be a team that I don't see them focusing on the wins. I think they're going to focus on just accumulating points. And like I mentioned, it can work really great in that first round, and potentially maybe they find their way into the top 7 because they have a couple big pop offs. But I think that when it ultimately comes down to if they do make finals, I think their play style could struggle just because one, they're going to run into a lot more teams that can also fight at a high level. And when you get to that match point style, things are just going to play a lot differently. There's going to be a lot less teams on
Maybe
edge.
maybe
It's
like a twerkaholic situation.
yes, that's probably a better comparison. Is I think right now would be a twerkaholics where, like I said, they're going to fight anybody. They're going to do a lot of different things on the map that you're not expecting, and I just think that at the end of the day, I could see them making finals in the right situation, but I think it's going to take their best fighting performances. Because again, like you mentioned, it's going to be vastly different from the Open. There's not going to be as many teams that don't have LAN experience that they're going to be going up against. And I do ultimately think that they're going to play on the knife's edge, that I could see them maybe squeaking in as the 7th team in the finals, but I also could see them being one of the 3 teams that go home first round just because they're going to try to take way too many fights and not be able to accumulate the points they need. So it'll be very interesting to see. They do get like a breaker wharf on Broken Moon, which is a really good edge POI. So if they're maybe able to have a couple pop off games there, you never know what could happen. But ultimately, if they continue to stay aggressive and play the way they have, I'll be very interested to see if it works, because
Yeah.
traditionally we haven't seen that.
It'll be a situation where maybe it's weird that this happens, because in like traditional sports it's just not really the way you look at it, but this might just be a situation where they just want to make a finals lobby. It necessarily, after that you're playing with house money.
Yeah,
You'll take what you can get. They just want to make a finals lobby just to prove that they can get themselves there. And as
definitely.
far as in the grand scheme of things, I would say they're I would say they're just like a in the hunt type team, meaning they're on the outside looking in. Like
Yeah.
they're not in the playoffs right now. If this was the NFL structure thing I was talking about, it'd be more of they're just looking for a chance, looking for an opening. And if they can get it, then they can capitalize off of it. But we'll have to see what goes down with Evos Esports. Let's move over into APAC North. We've got RRX, the all Japanese team. They were a decently nice surprise coming out of APAC North. They got 4th overall in their pro league, and they weren't near the top because the top teams were the SBIs, the Nosy Foxes, and the E36s. But in the the conglomeration of the rest of the 4 through 8 teams, where all the points were pretty close, they were at the top of that list. So, Don, for RRX, what do we see from this team? What do the people need to know about Team RRX?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see because it's a very inexperienced roster outside of Ray. He does bring a lot of experience. He actually was pretty close to making finals. His team had finished 22nd at the Esports World Cup last year. So they had just missed out during the qualification process, just during like the last chance qualifiers and all that. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. Again, I think in their situation, they probably took advantage of a weak APAC North this year, because I think, traditionally we would have seen like a Riddle Order or Reject Winity, even Crazy Raccoon being higher than what they were. I think that there's just a lot of teams that weren't playing as well, and they did a very good job of stepping into that gap and performing where they had the ability to. One thing I've noticed is that they were able to put up a decent amount of damage. I mean, they had 3rd of any team during Pro League in APAC North, but they only had the 10th most kills. So it seemed like they could run into an issue of converting some of their damage into kills, which again, when we get into these lobbies where teams are just racing to accumulate as many points as they can, they could be one of those teams that kind of falls behind because they can't convert their damage into kills. So it'll be interesting to see, when you have your leader at only 47 kills, that kind of shows that I think this team looks to be a little bit more on the patient side. They may not necessarily go out and be aggressive and take every fight possible. So I'll be interested to see if they are able to kind of make their mark on the LAN. I think if they do find their way into finals somehow, I think it'll come through that losers part. I don't think they'll be probably one of the 7 that directly qualifies. But again, you just never know at these lands. I mean, we saw a lot of craziness happen last year, and now that the losers finals has more than just two teams that will make the final lobby, you just never know if you can find your way, into that fifth or sixth slot. So
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what happens.
Yeah, moving over into the next team, the APAC South team. This is Team Seoul, and this was, if I'm correct on this, was it's Jesco, Legacy, and Sharky. Two of those were from Team Guild, correct?
Correct. Yep. That was
And
Jesco and
Guild was
Legacy.
kind of like the big surprise last Esports World Cup when they had MT.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see Seoul because I I was on that Guild train during that last Esports World Cup. I was looking to buy a jersey. I was looking to buy a hat. Couldn't find one. Thank God I didn't buy one because I probably would have absolutely nuked the squad. But I'm super excited about Seoul Esports. I think that if they can continue to put on some good performances here, it should be a good Esports World Cup for them. Maybe this is just their tournament. Who knows? They're sitting at fourth in their pro league, kind of once again separated from that upper echelon inside APAC South, but at the top of the conglomeration of teams from 4 through 8. Same exact situation as Team RRX, the one we just talked about here. Now, when you lose a guy like MT, it's not going to be easy to replace. But they have done a decent job, man. They've done a pretty decent job overall. What do you see from Seoul Esports, and kind of where do you see them fitting in the grand scheme of things here?
Yeah, I mean SAUL, like you mentioned, they were the guild roster before. They had gone from empty to phony because phony had filled in for them at champs when they were missing the IGL after empty left for Shopify, and then obviously phony returns back. They're looking for a third player. Oh hey, we'll just pick up a 2-time land champion and Sharky is our third, and
That always plays.
yeah, usually will tend to help out. So I think with them and their coach Rogers as well, Rogers has definitely been a name that's popped up, and a lot of people have a lot of high praises. I think just all around, it's a really, really good roster. You've got a duo with Jesco and Legacy. Sounds like Kira may agree with me, but those two definitely are a duo that has only improved throughout year 4. They again have only proven from IGL to IGL that they can get the job done, and even now we've seen, I believe, Legacy has stepped up into the IGL role and done a pretty damn good job with it. Like you mentioned, outside of those top 3, they're the best of the rest, in APAC South. And I think a lot of that just comes down to SAUL play a little bit more of like a flex style versus the 3 teams above them will definitely play a lot more hyper aggressive and take a lot more fights. So I think just the pure number of, I don't want to say lack of kills, but just kills comparative to the top 3. I think this team fits a lot more of a LAN than potentially the other 3 teams do. And I do think that on the right day, again, they'll be a team that can definitely compete towards, the top 10, top 5 potentially. So I'll be very excited to see, Sharky's definitely been in good form, led the team with 79 kills, which was top 5 in the region. They also performed very well on Storm Point, which is a map that is going to feature 3 times during the groups phase, and they ended up getting Mill, which, as we know, Mill traditionally a very, very good POI on Storm Point. So I definitely think they make another run to a finals lobby. It's just ultimately going to be what is their ceiling. Then after that, can they do enough to make their mark on the match point, or is it more of they'll kind of finish in that 10th, 12th, 13th range that we've seen them kind of finish before?
Yeah, so going to be really exciting there for I call him Soul. You were calling him SAUL. I'm notorious for getting names wrong on this.
Yeah, SAUL, from my understanding, is how the org wants to go by. So that's coming from B-Rad. Shout out to him, and shout out to my boy Pandas, who's given me a fuck ton of information on this region on top of watching. So shout out to
I
those
absolutely
guys for that.
fucked that, but we're okay.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
All good, all good. No, I'm really excited to see what they do. Very pumped. I just loved watching the roster as Guild, and I wish it was still under the Guild because I thought that G was it was such a sick G. Like that
Solid.
logo G was so badass. But
100%.
It's okay. It's all good. It is all good. We're going to move on into the next team, the APAC North team, SBI Esports. And Don, we talked a lot about SBI Esports. And why did we talk about them a lot? Because they gave us a reason to talk about them a lot. SBI Esports, coming from APAC North, they were the winner of the APAC North Pro League. They had the most points. They're at the top. Why? By 1 point, but it doesn't really matter. They still won. The craziest part about their win was the fact that they had a 0-point day, and they still managed to win it. So, Don, this team might surprise some people, might sneak up on some people. People might not understand or know who this team is going into it. The only thing that we can say that could potentially hold them back a little bit is the fact that they haven't had too much LAN experience. So what do you see coming out from SBI Esports here?
Yeah, I think that in a year, like we kind of mentioned before with RRX, this is another team that kind of stepped up into the gaps that have been left by some other teams that we kind of expected to perform a little bit better during Pro League. And I mean, they absolutely excelled. That you have to give them a ton of credit. No matter what you can say about the other teams, they were a team that outside of obviously that 0-point day, they showed up. They were winning multiple games during match days. They showed up and ended up winning the regional finals in a insane 1v1v1 to win the last game of the regional final. And you just have to give them a ton of credit. They've done a really good job of, despite their lack of experience with LAN, they get 80th place. They bring in E2 as their new third. And since then, they seem to play extremely well together. And we've got their player Mike, who had 73 kills, which is good for sixth in the Pro League. They had E2, even like I said, wasn't even with the team the whole time, and he got 71 kills in seventh place. So I think when you compare him to kind of like the Nosy Foxes and the E36s, they're going to play a little bit more patient. They're not as kill heavy, but I do think that the way that they were able to position themselves on the map, but also the way that they were able to traverse bad situations, because there was a time that in that last game that they had to pull off a crazy res and they weren't in the best position, but they were able to flip it by forcing another team out of their spot and end up getting the better spot. And again, ended up winning a crazy 1v1v1. So they do seem to have that clutch gene, which obviously will be huge when it comes to a LAN format. So I'll be very interested to see how they do. They had a pretty big weakness on E-District, so we'll have to see if they can improve that, because E-District will obviously come into play quite a few times at LAN. So we'll see if they're able to work through that. But I think that if they continue their performances that they had in Pro League, they're definitely going to be one of those teams that is kind of those dark horses that you kind of need to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
And see
a
what happens.
wild card of sorts.
Yeah.
A wild card of sorts. Super excited. Super excited for SBI Esports. Always cool to see new teams and new faces and all of these different things kind of come together. That's what makes the sport so fun in the first place. So I will be ready for it. I will be rooting for SBI Esports. Oh no, now they suck. Let's move on into the Americas region. We're going to go over to Shopify Rebellion. And Shopify, I made a claim, I think, right after the Open. I think it was like one of the first Pro League match days after the Open. I said Shopify are going to win this tournament. So spoiler alert for the future. I do have my prediction already locked. Let's see if I change it in the time from here to the end. But I said Shopify Rebellion was going to win this whole thing. And I don't know. I just feel like as a squad, you've got MT, Koifel, Zainu, obviously is the team. I feel like MT and Zainu together as an IGL unit, because I don't even want to say MT is the pure IGL. Obviously he is, but a lot comes from Zainu, and he helps out a ton with just the overall team comms and also just the overall team morale and being able to keep everybody in the right spot. And for a guy his age, it's actually really impressive. If you see any of the moments where they're about to lose it, he's able to always kind of bring it back in, hold the team together. Super fun to watch, super interesting to watch. And I also just think that their firepower is next to none, right? We could have talked about them easily at the beginning of the show where we talked about the teams that are absolutely dominant. We talked about Alliance only. Easily could have brought up Shopify in that list, because they're another one where if they won this whole thing, I don't think a whole lot of people would be surprised. I'm pumped. Now, Don, did I miss anything on Shopify that you would like the people to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only big thing that I did want to bring up is that I know here in recent times, their scrim performances have been pretty bad. I've been kind of surprised with how things have looked during scrims. I really feel like in this more aggressive open format, we kind of see them dominate a lot more. And they've definitely had great days, don't get me wrong. And like fifth place at the Open and fifth place in Pro League is definitely not bad by any means, but I almost do feel like that's almost like a failure in their eyes. And I do feel like
100%.
they are in a position where you either can come out, you're super hungry to prove that you're one of the top 2, 3 teams in the world, right? Or you might be in a position where you're pressing too hard and trying to achieve this goal of always winning everything. So I'll be very interested to see if they are able to balance their aggressiveness and are able to not over fight at times, because I think that definitely is their downfall, is that they will take very bad fights, which, even if they win the fight, will either one will get third partied or two will put them in bad position on the map. So I'll be very, like I said, it's going to be a team that I will definitely keep my eye on. I definitely think you have to consider them one of the favorites just because of on paper what they bring. But I do think that of that favorite category, at least right now, they probably are the team that might be closer to falling out of that just based
Mm-hmm.
on kind of some recent form. But again, you can't discount them at all.
Yeah.
There's way too much firepower on that team,
Now,
so we'll see.
I do have a question. Now that Waldsey has won a LAN, does MT move into that slot of the player that desperately, like, you want them to win a LAN so bad? Does he move into that next slot where it's like he absolutely deserves to win a LAN at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's either empty or dropped. I think one of
Mm-hmm.
those two, like, it's just IGLs that have just been so close so many times. They've had so many good rosters, and obviously, from all accounts, empty definitely just seems like a very chill dude and somebody that everybody gets along with. So it's definitely somebody you root for. It's definitely put in all the work. I mean, just looking at his resume, he's been to 11 lands, which I'm pretty sure the most
Good
is like 12 or 13, I think, is the most of any player, because that's
Yeah.
that's just number of lands Apex has ever had. So like it's one of those things, again, like I think it's either him or dropped. I think one of those two are the ones that I don't want to even say most deserving, but I just think that like if they won, that's just kind of like
It's
a
gonna be
very
awesome.
feel good moment.
Oh,
So
it's gonna be awesome. We want
yeah.
we want it for MT so bad. One last little tidbit about Shopify before we move on is Koifel and Zainu with 86 and 85 kills respectively. And when we talked about other regions and like top kills for teams, we were in like the 50s, the 40s. You got two guys on one team
On
at
the same
86 and
team.
85.
Yeah.
So
It's
big.
insane. It's
Like
insane.
this is what where the Americas region is at right now, right?
Yeah.
This is just where it's at. It's kind of separated itself. We do know a lot of APAC South talent came over to the Americas region, so not to take away anything from APAC South. I now that we have I haven't really been watching it, to be honest with you, but the Club World Cup in World Soccer, I would love to see, and I think Jayhawk tweeted this out a few weeks ago. It
Yeah.
was if there was ever like a an Apex World Cup, I think that would be really fun to watch. Like, first of all, the roster formation, who who makes up the teams for, I mean, I think a lot of names jump off the page, but there'd be a lot of admissions there. Like
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of people who miss out from the America region. There's going to be a lot of people who miss out from APAC South. I don't know. I think it'd be a fun time, even if it was just like the individual countries. You could make an entire LAN event out of that. I think it'd be really fun. So,
Yeah.
so that is Shopify. Going to be
USA
really
versus
excited.
Australia would go insane,
Oh, dude, that would
with the
go
talent
crazy.
that are between these two
You know what?
countries. Is I mean, just even looking too, because we were even laughing about it when I was watching a privacy stream. Just even the coaches list for Australia. I mean, you've got Don, you got Draugr, you've got Rogers, you got Winnie. Like just those four coaches alone, it's like who would be the one person you would pick to coach that team? Like it's insane, just like the talent pool. Like obviously the US, because like America's is the best region, But Australia, man, for whatever reason, just breeds Apex. It's actually crazy. So,
Yeah.
and that's not even including like a Legacy and a Jesco and a bunch of these other players that are kind of making that second wave right now of Australian players. So it's going to be, yeah, I would desperately ask if Apex could figure out one thing, maybe besides fixing fucking ranked, is get a freaking World Cup, because we would love to see it.
Even if they didn't want to make it a full-on LAN event, they just wanted to have like some sort of like World Cup action. Dude, honestly, we should try to do this. We should just, as a podcast, we should do a like 4v4 TDM challenge between all of the nations and just organize it and just see what happens. If we couldn't get a LAN going, like obviously EA's they've got their own problems to work out. As a podcast, if we could find a way to get all the players to agree to just doing like a 4v4 TDM from the nations during the World Cup. Obviously the World Cup's coming up next year. We have that go on while the World Cup is going on. We have our World Cup of Apex TDM. Be extremely fun to watch, I think. We'll have Jay and Jumba cast it. We'll have Connor, our sideline reporter,
say 4 things the entire cast.
Yeah.
Jay and I will get on the spreadsheet. We'll get that shit started.
No, that would be so fun. That'd
go insane.
Moving on into another America's team, we've got Liquid Alienware. We've got Nizel, Jaguares, and Yanya. Now, this team had split up for a slight little blip in time, but they are back together as a team. But it hasn't been like their typical run-of-the-mill pro league. There was a lot of struggles. Obviously, they didn't start the pro league together. They kind of came there afterwards, after the Open. That is when everybody kind of came back. Yanya came back over, and they've had some good times. They've had some bad times as well, but we know that this team has a lot of history. And what we've talked about in this podcast a lot is teams that do stay together and formulate that history. A lot of times that chemistry can't be replicated, even with talent. So what do you see from Liquid Alienware? Like, this version of Liquid Alienware, if this is a year ago, I don't think we're speaking about them this way. But right now, it's like, where are they at? Are they the same Liquid Alienware that we've known from the past?
Yeah, I think right now this is definitely a different version of Liquid than I think we've seen, just at least in terms of just their overall performance. You know, I haven't got the chance to really like watch their POV if they're still playing like the hyper aggressive way, but just at least based on the numbers, it definitely just seems like they're either not winning as many fights that they're used to winning, or they're not taking as many fights as they're used to. Just because, just seeing, you know, Nazul led their team with 59 kills during the split, which is definitely not, I think, normal for them just in terms of the number. I really feel like we're used to seeing this team produce such high kill numbers at times. You know, we're used to seeing, I mean, they held the record at LAN for most, you know, kills and points in a singular game. So it's one of those things that, you know, we'll have to see if maybe some of the flair can come back at LAN. I do remember we did see some struggles from them at LANs when they were even together and doing, you know, performing better. I remember Germany was a good example of that. They definitely were struggling their way through a lot of the losers brackets and really kind of struggled to really get their footing. So I'll be interested to see what happens. I know a big struggle that they had is Broken Moon. They are the worst performing team on that map. So they ended up prioritizing the other maps, which I think is a good idea at this point. So we'll see if that ends up helping them or not. But I'll be very interested to see if they can return to some of their fighting prowess that we've seen in the past, because I think that's just what we've always insinuated with Liquid, right? It's just a team that can fight anybody.
Fighting team, yeah.
So
100%. Moving on into the last few teams here, we've got Twisted Minds from the Americas regions. That's Alberlelli, Enemy, and Crook. And this is another team. I do feel like they kind of fit into the ROC esports category, if that makes sense. Rock, where they have the ability to absolutely win a day, and then they do have that floor where it's kind of like, okay, wait a second, like what is this team? And you kind of revert back to, you know, kind of past performances, struggles, all that kind of stuff. But Twisted Minds did come out in this split and they played really, really well. So One thing to note here is I do think that Enemy has his confidence back. I think he even tweeted it out that he's excited that he has his confidence back. So I'm really happy for that. I think Enemy playing the way he has been playing has been really good. Alberlelli, obviously, he's been having a great resurgence, and it continues to grow. He continues to grow. And then Crook as the IGL. This team, when you watch their VODs, there's a lot of free flowing conversation going back and forth, a lot of calls going around. So I'm I- I'm struggling to put them into a category as far as where I'll throw it to you. Do they make finals?
I do think they ultimately end up making finals. I feel like it could be kind of in those situations where they may struggle a little bit to get there. But I do think, we saw at the Open that, they did perform well, and they ended up getting, I think it was sixth place, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they're just kind of a weird team because obviously, they have the Open. They had a really good run. They'd started off pretty well during Pro League, but then you kind of blink and it's like, oh, they finished 11th. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of one of those teams that like you almost feel like they're performing better at times than they really are. And I just think that they didn't necessarily have the greatest end to their Pro League. And I know just with how kind of close a lot of those teams were in the middle, when that regional finals came and there was those inflated points, I think that definitely was a big part of why they fell down the standings as well. But the biggest thing am going to be curious with how it goes is that Crook a lot of the times has been on a crypto in the past and has IGL'd from that. And they've moved him, at least during the regional final, he was a lot of the time on Sparrow, which obviously is a lot more, out in the open. You're not necessarily sitting in drone nearly as much. Yes, um, it's really nice to have the ultimate for Sparrow, but I'm curious if maybe for EWC he ends up playing a lot more of crypto and kind of going away from the Sparrow. It'll be very interesting to see because I'm just kind of scrolling through the regional final, and it definitely looked like for the most part he did play Sparrow more often than crypto. So I'll be interested to see if they stick with that plan after struggling and getting 16th during the regional final, or if they have maybe worked out some of the kinks and he continues on that character. Because I know the character obviously provides a lot, but when Crook is so good at crypto, it's almost like why fix something that's not broken.
Yeah, and
So
I think I gave the wrong comparable to Twisted Minds. I said they're more like Rock. I think it's more kind of like VP, where they started off really well and then things kind of fell off after that. I think that's more the comparable because I think Rock, obviously they shot up after the Open. Everything started to go their way. Whereas Twisted Minds, like you said, that you look at it and you're like, holy shit, they got 11th. And you just kind
yeah,
of forget that that entire second half wasn't exactly the Twisted Minds that we were seeing in the first half. So we'll have to see what happens. It'll be one of those teams that I'm really looking at. Because the last time we saw them, they were in the final fight at the late game. So you want to
yeah,
see them do that again. I love the players on the team, and I want to see them do well. But ultimately, if their past performances proved us anything, it's that you don't really know what you're going to get. So we'll
yeah.
see what goes
And
down with
it's
Twisted
always,
Minds.
yeah, it's always going to come down to how well Crook and Al kind of IGL together because they definitely balance each other out. With Al tending to be a little bit more aggressive, and Crook being a little bit more wanting to play for position. So I'll be interested to see how it goes. And ultimately how their cohesion works between the co IGLs at times. And if they're able to do that, I think they'll definitely, we'll see a lot more of like what their open performance was. It feels pretty zone heavy is what they're leaning towards, at least based off their POI draft, because they went, POIs like Monument, Command Center, Vibe Isle, and Terraformer, which is going to be a lot more towards zone. So I'll be interested to see if they end up just playing a lot more patient this time around and kind of let the game come to them. And again, if Crook and Alp can IGL well together.
Okay, we've got 3 teams remaining here. We've got Unlimit. Is that how that's actually the name? Unlimit? They didn't want to put the ED at the end?
Nope.
Unlimited? Okay, all right, that's
Some
fine.
limit.
Unlimited's cool. Unlimit's cool. APAC North team. We got Yulari, man. I don't know how to say the last two, so I'm not even going to try because I've
Me
already
either.
messed up enough names on this podcast. But Don, talk to me about Unlimit.
It has been quite the story to see this team develop. We saw them qualify for APAC North out of the PSQs, and we didn't really know much about Yulari Man, but we quickly learned who this man was and just how bad this man is in Apex. And I don't mean bad as in sucks. I mean bad as in he's just that guy. It's been pretty incredible to watch. They end up getting 11th at the Open, which I don't think really anybody expected them to perform that highly because it was all of their first lands, and especially for a team that came from qualifiers to do that at the Open and then finish top 5 in their pro league. Yes, again, you can say whatever you want about APAC North as a whole. They just frag out. Like, they can shoot with anybody. Yulari Man had 113 kills during the split, which you literally
That's
laugh
crazy.
at it because it's like there's just no way that's the truth. But
That's crazy.
he only got, I believe, beat out by Effect. I think Effect was the only player with more kills, and maybe I think one other player out of APAC South, but still like top 5 in the world for a guy that came from qualifiers. People I'm sure were throwing out the accusations until he goes to the Open and just frags at the Open and they finish 11th. So like it's a fun story to watch. I'll be very interested to see how this aggressiveness can play out on land. Again, they're going to fall in like that category of like an E36 and a Nosy Fox that are going to want to play aggressively and take a lot of fights. But when you've got that much firepower and it's consistently shown, whether it's Pro League or the Open, I don't really see why they would slow down. I think they could make finals, and we could potentially see a repeat performance of them getting a top 10, 15. It will be interesting to see how they can play on E-District because that was a map they struggled on. And again, typically their play style is trying to find picks early, get some fights on edge, whereas E-District, a lot less teams are going to want to play edge. So I'll be very interested to see how that map in particular goes. They did get Lotus on that map, which is definitely one of the top 5 POIs on E-District. So even though they struggled, they should be in a pretty good position playing out of that POI. And again, I don't really see any reason why they would slow down unless they ran into, Falcons a bunch of times or Alliance or whatever the case is. So definitely one of those teams to keep your eye on. I'm not gonna say the word because then they'll get immediately last place.
Yeah, we don't want
but
that.
They're just one of those teams, if you get what I'm inferring, that will be interesting to watch.
Last 2 teams, we've got one from the America region, one from APAC South, and I'm going to save the APAC South team for the end because that is Don's team. Let's start off with Virtus Pro. We got Zach Mazer, Slayer, and Lou. And for a moment here, VP was sitting atop the Americas region. They were coming off some incredible performances, some great games, lots of good calls, lots of good team cohesion. Slayer was on something different, and now they they made it close at the end there. And I feel like it was in perfect like Zach Mazer fashion, where it's just like everything was looking great. All of a sudden, it was looking really bad, but then he manages to pull it out and keep everything together. They get 14th overall inside the region with 77 points. And I'm happy to see them there because I love talking to Zach. I love talking to Slayer. Haven't gotten a chance to talk to Lou yet, but both those guys I really enjoy. This is the tough part. Who the hell are we going to get? Who are we? I think this is as much as a toss up as any other team in any other like you just don't know. You have no idea who's going to show up. At the top end, VP is a team that can contend with the best. They are a Super Bowl contender. And at the bottom end, you wonder if they're going to be in contention for the first overall pick. You just don't know what you're going to get from VP. You want to see them do well. I love watching them when they're doing well. I love Zach's IGL style. I love that he talks a lot. I love that he calms literally everything. It makes it a really fun watch. I've been a big fan of Lou for his time with Complexity, right? So I
Yeah.
already really liked Lou. We had Slayer on the pod, one of my favorite interviews. So it's like I like all these guys. I want to see them do well. What happened there in the back end, Don? I don't even know can you even describe it as anything else other than I don't know?
Yeah, it's really tough to really pinpoint it because again, it's just like you see these rosters that are led by Zach, and it's just like you've seen, they've gotten second at an online championship. I believe it was year two. Um, when he was with Cloud9, you've seen, where they got, rinsed essentially by Nasky in a contest on land. Then you see them at Japan, and they're one fight away from extending the land even further and potentially, being the team that could win it on a match point. You've just seen so many different versions of the same IGL. It's just like I really don't know what to say with this team anymore. It's just like you expect them to be on paper one of the better teams, and if I had to pick one way or the other, I just feel like they're going to be very hungry to prove a lot of people wrong, given how the split ended, and being grateful enough that they qualified, that they're going to want to show up and show out. And I think we've seen at land more often than not that Zach is that team that will show up and have a performance. Because I think outside of that, even that contest that I brought up in LA, if they don't have that contest, they're definitely one of the better teams going into that final. So I think their biggest thing is that if they can just make the final in pretty good shape and their vibes aren't too shot, I definitely think they can be a team that can, get a top 10. We've seen it before enough times. But it's just like you said, it's just like I also could see them somehow being one of the three teams that goes home on day one. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just you just don't know who you're
It's
gonna
it's
see.
it's literally one of those situations where you could talk yourself into either situation so easily. Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't require like a whole lot of explanation for you to if somebody walked up to you and said, "Where do you see Virtus Pro?" and you said 17th, I think they get bounced immediately. They'd be like, "Okay, yeah, I get it. They've struggled out the gate. They struggled on the back half after the open. Makes a ton of sense." And then if somebody walked up to you, a different person, and said, "Where do you see VP?" So I think they're going to win the whole fucking thing. Like, why do you think? Well, did you see how well they were doing to start this pro league split? Did you see how well they can be as a team? You've seen Slayer's resurgence, right? So it's like you can talk yourself into any part of it. Maybe the winning the whole thing is a little bit more of a stretch, but also like if they were to, even if they don't win, if they were to get another top five like they did at champs, that's not a far stretch. Like I don't think if I walked up to Jay or Jumba and I said, "Yeah, I think VP is getting top five," I don't think they'd be like, "Nah." Like I think they'd be like, "Oh, I could see it." Maybe they don't personally believe that they would get the top five, but I think that they could see where that could happen, right? So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a weird situation. I want to see it, and it's so funny too. You brought up the contest with Nasky, and then like they absolutely get shit stomped, and then the one game they actually get to play, they pulled out like the craziest win of all time,
Yeah.
just
Literally.
insane. So
Yeah.
it's just the Zach Mazer experience. Whatever, if they ever have a Hall of Fame of Apex Legends IGLs, Zach may not be in the Hall of Fame for like, hey, he was the greatest IGL of all time. But what he would be in there for is pure entertainment value.
Yeah.
Pure entertainment. I think him and Design both fit in that role. Like, I think they both kind of
you're,
fit there.
you're
They're like,
definitely probably right.
they bring the heat, whether it's
Yeah.
the weirdest finishes or the best finishes. They bring the heat. So that is
Yeah.
VP. And Don, let's round it out with the final team here. VK Gaming. You've been the champion of VK Gaming forever. You've been saying that this is a team people should be watching out for. What do you got on VK Gaming? This is your squad right here. How are you feeling about them heading into or not the open, into the mid-season playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're VK Gaming, you're definitely feeling really good. They end up winning Pro League, and had a very solid performance during regional finals as well. So I definitely think they're a team that has definitely figured out their region and should for the foreseeable future be qualifying to every land, just coming from APAC South. But they've definitely developed from what I think some people thought was mainly just a crypto team, because that's how kind of saw them playing heading into Germany. They are definitely a team that will take fights. Like they have been somebody that has been super aggressive, especially during this pro league. They definitely rank amongst the top teams with kills. And QQ definitely had one of his best splits. He had 104 kills, which again, one of the only few players in the world that broke the 100 kill barrier. That was good for third in the region, if that tells you like how some of these other numbers went down to within the region. But they're just a team that, they rank top 10 across every single map they played in Pro League. So they're good at every single map. They don't really have one that they faltered on. They have the most points accumulated on E-District, which, again, for a team that's aggressive and a map that doesn't necessarily play that way, it's definitely a good sign for them that they're able to kind of still stay aggressive and get the points they can on E-District. So I definitely think it's a team that they will be in contention. It's just, are we going to see a team that ends too much in the finals lobby and kind of ends up where they were at the Open? Or are they going to be more like a team at Champs where they are a little bit more position based? They find themselves in the right spot. And if it wasn't for a fourth and fifth party, that Go Next ends up being the winner of, they're right in the game winning position. Because again, they were on match point. They were one of those 4 or 5 teams that kind of piled up there in that Overlook fight. And they were right there to winning the biggest Apex event that's ever took place. So I think the sky is definitely the limit for this team. I feel good about them, which means they'll definitely get 40th. But again, like I just think everything on paper screams that this team should be getting top 10. It's just, can they make those final decisions to be a contender?
All right, Dawn. It's the moment of truth.
Oh, God.
It is prediction time. All right? Prediction time. Here's what I want. I want a winner. I want a top 3. And then I want a dark horse. All right? Okay. Do you need me to go first?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Prediction time. And once again, I apologize to all of these teams ahead of time.
Any team you mentioned
I am just
in the next 5 minutes. Sorry,
my
guys.
job. Okay? I'm just doing my job. Actually, I'm going to add one thing. A team that you think is going to do well that might struggle. A team that most people expect to do well. General consensus, team does well, they struggle. All right?
Okay.
My winner, I said it a long time ago. I am not going to change it. I think Shopify Rebellion is going to win. I have Shopify Rebellion as the winner. I'm going to keep it that way. I think Shopify Rebellion, when I look at their team dynamic, it's one of my favorites to watch. I just love it. I love watching the way they calm. I love watching the way they fight. 85, 84 kills respectively. You got to love that from Koifel and Zainu. I love having that. I think MT, and I didn't even realize this till I talked to Jay, but just realizing how many times he's has put himself in a great spot to win a LAN, and just how many high tier finishes he has. People talk about his ability to not slay out. I don't know. I think when you got those two guys, when you got the Bash brothers over there just killing everything, I'll take that. I'll take that all day long. So I think Shopify Rebellion is going to be the winner. If I'm picking a second place team to round out my top 3, I got to pick the greatest second place team of all time. I'm going to pick Alliance. I got Alliance as my second place team. And then for my third place team, I am going to go with Na'Vi. I really like the way they played. They obviously won champs, and they continue to perform after that. I think they continue to do that. I think they keep going with good performances. I feel like they are the team that is going to turn into a team that a lot of people start to know. Remember when they won under the Go Next crown, even me and you were frustrated a little bit because there's the storyline of Sweet who was right there. There was VP who could have kept it going. Go Next, I don't even know who these guys are. Then we talk to these guys and we realize that they're actually some really cool dudes, and they continue to perform. Be a whole different story if they just dropped off the face of the planet, right? So I'm excited to see Na'Vi, and I think that they could be a team that, in the future will continue to perform like this. And this is going to be a team that we expect in and out every single tournament, every single LAN to perform. Now, if I had to pick a team that I don't think is going to do as good as people are expecting, it'll be 100 Thieves, like we talked about at the start of the show. I don't know. I haven't liked the way that they've been playing recently. You look at their kills. Phony's leading it with 68. You don't expect that typically. You'd want Evan up there. You'd want Jen up there. They're both at 51, which is pretty far behind. They're going to need some firepower to win this tournament, and I do think that they might struggle. I don't think they'll get bounced like immediately. I just don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
I'm just not fully invested in 100 Thieves. Dawn, your predictions.
All right. I've gone back and forth because, again, I just think right now, for me, there's just two teams that I think in these formats are just clear right now. And I just don't think I've seen enough from anybody else to really change that. I think if I had to go with somebody, I think Falcons gets it done in front of the home crowd. I think that they were so close last year. We obviously saw how they were reacting and how much it meant to them just, having the org there and being where the org is at. I think that they're going to learn a lot of their lessons from last year. And obviously we've seen them win the first LAN with the legend bands in place. I think that with their versatility, with their ability to, Hal sometimes play the frontline character, Zero play the frontline character, just depending on what characters are available. And then just every other superlative of Hal just being a freak on controller and being the best shooter in the game right now. I think Waltzy getting the confidence from winning his first LAN. I just think that, despite what a lot of people will say, I just think that Falcons will be the team that takes it. I agree with you. I think Alliance will end up in second. I almost think sometimes their play style is just bred to get second place, unfortunately, just because of some of their struggles on match point. Again, if there's any place to prove people wrong, it's obviously where you got it done last year. But even last year, we obviously know there was a couple opportunities before they won for them to close it out, and they didn't quite do it. It took, some miraculous plays by other teams to keep the LAN going. So I do think they end up at second. And I think for my third place team, and this has honestly been the one I have been struggling to figure out just because I think third is just so up for grabs right now. I think that. Fuck, I'm just going to back the boys. I'm just going to say VK Gaming finds a way to get third. I think that they have played well. I think that, they've been close a couple times to finding their way into the top 5 at a LAN. And I think that with this format, I think they should feel pretty comfortable with getting through that top 7. And I think that they will be able to find a way to get it done and find themselves in that top 3. For my one team, I think that won't do well, that I think a lot of people are expecting. Just something in my gut tells me I'm not gonna sit here and say they're gonna miss finals or anything before anybody gives me heat for this. I just for some reason don't have a great feeling about Shopify right now.
Oh no, my pick.
I hated when you said that because I've thought about it more and more. Which honestly, I don't know if it might me saying this might cancel out what you said. So they'll do well, maybe I don't know, but I just for some reason I feel like anything outside the top 3 for them is bad, in terms of their standards. And I just for some reason I feel like I see them getting a 7th or an 8th or something like that, which again for a lot of other teams is potentially the best result they'll get at a LAN. But I feel like for them, they'll see that as a pretty big disappointment. Something just for me, how things have gone recently in scrims, how some of the things even were going down during the end of the split. Just something tells me I'm not fully confident that we'll see the same version. Just even seeing them get 13th there in the regional final, for something just tells me that I just don't think we'll see the same version that we've seen in the past. My only other thing I do want to mention is that everybody still needs to keep their eye on Alcatia because I feel like that's a team that is very easily forgotten about because everybody doesn't think about Alcatia as a team, as those top 2 or 3 teams in the world. But I think we've seen it too many times now where Strafing Flame is able to take a roster, and especially with a roster with Pricey, with Player K. We saw them get it done at the Open, and we're very close to figuring things out. I've got a decent feeling about them. They had struggled in the finals at EWC last year, but they pulled off that miraculous play that kept things going. But going into that finals, they were one of 2 teams that was going toe-to-toe with Falcons in that group stage. So I'll be very interested to see how they play, because I do think that their play style is more meant for LAN, just in terms of getting to zone. And I think they do a very, very good job of that. And I just think that the recipe is there for them to have a very good LAN, and it would not surprise me if they shock some people with another, top 2 or 3 performance as well.
All right, last prediction. Who is the team most likely to get 5th or 6th? And this one was tough for me, really. It was. But ultimately, I'm going to go with AGG.
Damn.
I think I'm going to go with AGG. Yeah. I have a feeling. I have a feeling about it. Yeah, I just got a feeling.
Or 7th or 8th even, some would say.
It could be 7th, maybe even 3rd.
Maybe 3rd.
Could be 9th. You never really know with that team. Yeah. So, okay, ladies and gents, that should just about do it for pool number B. Super excited for EWC. We're going to be putting this out. And then not only that, after this episode is over, what me and Don are going to do is going to have a live stream where we go over this once again. But Don, I was thinking about this as we were going down. The NFL idea where it's like the tiers, when we do the stream, I think we put that up as like a tier maker, and we put the teams into that tier just based purely off of in the hunt, on the bubble, contender, Super Bowl champion. Like we put it in there like that, and then we go through and we talk about the teams each time that way. I think that would be like the best way to do it.
We cook something up for sure. So
yeah, I think we do something where we like tier it up. But yeah, so we're gonna be going live. Do you want to go live on the Apex, or do you want to go live on the Dawn channel?
I'm good with whatever. We can figure that out. Just definitely be sure to follow both, just in case. We'll let you guys know in the Discord, and obviously Wyatt and I will be tweeting that out as well. We'll be looking to do that next Wednesday, which is the day before EWC. So all the information will be fresh. We can see how bad we do, how good we do, more than likely how bad we do given our track record. But definitely be on the lookout. Have notifications turned on for Twitch from either the Apex or my channel, DK Don 06. Again, that'll be on the 9th of July. And I am definitely very excited to go more in depth with it. So.
Hell yeah, baby. So thank you guys for tuning in. We will catch you guys probably right after EWC is open. We might do some shows because we're going to be still here. This is one that we're not going to. So we might be able to just record some quick pods, maybe even do some live pods and just throw them up on the old channel after each day, just to kind of get everything out of the way, get your guys' content fill in there throughout the week. But just keep your eyes open, keep your ears peeled. We're going to be doing some stuff for EWC.
What I plan on doing is I will be live watch partying everything as it's going on from my channel, DK Don 06. But then I think what would be cool to do is potentially on the Apex, I'll be doing a live stream to recap it later that night for the North American fans that maybe weren't able to watch it live. We can kind of break everything down, see how well teams did, how bad teams did, and kind of go from there. Obviously, hopefully Wyatt can join when that is, because I know especially the Thursday and Friday you'll be working. My boss is goated, and I am not working those days, so I'll be watching it. But yeah, we'll have the double stream going, once in the morning and once at night. And yeah, should have you guys all covered for EWC.
Hell yeah, baby. All right, well, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week for EWC. We're super excited. We're ready to go. We'll see you guys soon. See ya.